Many times when I'm making a video about a watch, doesn't matter if it's a micro brand or a major brand, I get a comment saying, hey, what about Baltic? And it's kind of crazy. I've actually never featured a Baltic here on my channel. However, today all that changes. I have a Baltic here hands-on to show you guys. It's their latest release. It's a Prismic with a stone dial. These are limited editions, and I have the New York version to show you guys with a green Jade dial. When the Prismic came out, I was immediately impressed. I love the styling of these watches. I love the movement choice and a lot of the materials that they're using. And of course, you guys know I love a small seconds. So I'm very excited about this watch and I really cannot wait to show it to you guys. So let's take a hands-on look at the latest release from Baltic, the Prismic Stone Dial Edition. So you can probably tell that I'm pretty excited about featuring my first Baltic on my channel, and this is quite the Baltic to feature first. This is the Prismic. It gets small seconds, a hand-wound movement, which is actually an ETA 7001. We'll get back to that in just a few minutes. This is a stone dial version of the Prismic. It's a limited edition, and specifically this one is the New York version. So this gets a jade green dial. So that's actually a stone dial. That is a piece of jade, that dial, which looks phenomenal. I'll do plenty of close-ups so you could see all the different texturing and patterns in the dial. It looks absolutely beautiful. You have applied indices on that dial. So this is a little bit different from the other Prismics that they released because obviously those had guilloche dials. There were patterns on those dials. The small seconds had its own little sub-dial pattern as well. This gets the sub-dial at the 6 o'clock. However, obviously it's a stone dial, so they can't do all of those levels, but the stone dial looks beautiful. Again, you have those applied indices and you have these dagger hands that almost look like Grand Seiko hands. They look really sharp, very crisp and clean. And then you have that running seconds at the 6 o'clock position. The indices that are applied, they're almost like fence post indices. They're stick indices that are pointed on the end. And then you have two of those at the 12 o'clock to give you orientation. At the 6 o'clock, they cut off the index. However, it looks awesome. They made it a little diamond and it sits right at the bottom of the dial. Really very cool. Now this does get a few different materials besides the stone, obviously the stone dial, very important, but you're also getting a stainless steel case and it's made out of grade 5 titanium. When you turn it on its side, you're going to notice there's almost a two-tone effect to this case. That mid case is made out of grade 5 titanium. So you have a polished crown, which is actually quite large, and then you have that mid case that is in grade 5 titanium. The edges on the stainless steel are polished. You have brushing on the lugs. The lugs are very long and they are drilled. Really a beautiful execution on the case. And then you have a slightly boxed sapphire crystal. So that sits slightly higher off of the stepped bezel. So the top portion of the case is slightly stepped. One part, the bottom part or the outer part, is brushed. The inner part is polished. So there's transitioning between polishing and brushing throughout the case. The tops of the lugs are polished. Like I said, the sides of the lugs are brushed. Then you have this mesh bracelet. So I wouldn't call it a mesh bracelet. I guess they call it a mesh bracelet, but it's more like a jewelry-like mesh bracelet is what I would call it. Again, this is inspired by cocktail dress watches from the 1960s, 70s, and they even made them into the 80s. A lot of those watches had integrated bracelets that had a mesh like this. It's a very tight mesh, a very fine mesh that won't capture hairs in it and pull. It actually is almost like a piece of jewelry. It's beautiful and it's really smooth. And one thing that's always great about a mesh bracelet is that you have infinite adjustability. This will fit almost any wrist perfectly because you could adjust it just a little bit if you need to on the fly. So technically this was sort of the first on the fly micro adjust, if you want to put it that way. There's another thing about this bracelet that I do want to point out. They didn't just put any buckle on here. The buckle on here is really nice. I've featured many watches with mesh bracelets here on my channel, but this is very solid. When you flip that over, it feels very solid. And listen to this. Very solid snap. It says Baltic on there. Very secure, very solid. feels really nice. And inside, like I was mentioning before, is an ETA movement. It is the 7001. If you're not familiar with the ETA 7001, this one is a really nice example. This, I believe, is a top grade or could be an elaborate grade. You have blued screws, you have Geneva striping. It looks beautiful. This is a movement that's used in a lot of higher end brands, and they do some customization to them. Brands like Ming, and they charge obviously thousands of dollars for their watches. So obviously, this is a very reliable, very good movement, and the fact that they're using an ETA movement, obviously, again, I really like that. ETA 7001 is a great movement. As I have this flipped over, you can see you have a screwed in case back, and then you have quick release on this bracelet. I would never take it off this bracelet because I absolutely love it, but they do offer this on a strap as well. Now, this is a 36 millimeter watch. I measured basically spot on at 36 millimeters. You have a 44 millimeter lug to lug. So that is actually at the case. So on a strap, this will wear like a 44 millimeter lug to lug. However, on the bracelet, it does wear slightly larger. I would say this wears like a 37 millimeter watch, maybe like a 37.5 millimeter watch. That's because you're getting a much larger lug to lug because of the way that the bracelet interacts with the case. You can see it does not bend down. So the lug to lug here is much larger. However, since it curves down really nicely, this will wear very nicely on smaller wrists. However, I do want to mention this because if you have a very small wrist, and I'm talking about much smaller than mine, you're going to have a problem with that fitment a little bit, and you're probably better off going for the strap. So 36 millimeters, it depends on how you wear it, but it could wear a little bit larger than that. The thickness here is extremely thin. So I use the word thickness. The thinness here is very, very thin. This comes in at around 8 millimeters thick. That's not including that sapphire crystal. With the sapphire crystal, it's around 8.8 millimeters thick. That's what I measured my calipers. So this is a very thin watch, and it wears very thin to the wrist because of that bracelet, which is also very thin, and I'll show you it on my wrist in a few seconds. And you have an almost 6 millimeter crown, which is great. It's very easy to operate, especially since you have to wind this watch on a regular basis. They did this right. There was a lot of attention to detail put into the case and the overall design of this watch. Obviously, whoever designed this watch loves 1970s cocktail watches. Piaget and brands like that. Vacheron made watches like this, and a whole slew of other brands. Even Universal Genève and a bunch of really popular brands at the time would make watches like this. Patek Philippe, another one. Beautiful watches with great inspiration, and this is just gorgeous. Today on my wrist, I have my IWC Perpetual Calendar GST. This is a perpetual calendar chronograph, which I absolutely love, in titanium. I recently put this on a strap that was given to me by my friend Reggie, and man, what a good looking watch. He was actually recently on Watchbox. They did a collector series. Definitely check him out. He is just a really great guy, and he gave me this strap because he wasn't using it, and I definitely appreciate that. And there it is on my 7.5 inch wrist. This is a 36 millimeter watch. It's under 9 millimeters thick, including that sapphire crystal, which is slightly raised off of that bezel. You have a 44 or 45 millimeter lug to lug, and it's a little bit bigger because of that bracelet. So the bracelet does wear like a cuff, so it will wear larger than 44 millimeters on the bracelet. If this was on a strap, it would wear like a 44 millimeter watch. You'd have these long lugs on here, which is obviously part of the look, but it just looks so cool. Just like a vintage watch, but obviously very, very modern. You have that stone dial that is pretty much unique because every stone dial is different. So this is a unique dial to this watch. This is a limited edition of 200 pieces. Each one of those pieces of jade will be different. They made two other versions. One has like an orange red dial. The other is I believe a lapis blue, and it's in celebration of each one of their studios around the world. So they have a studio here in New York. Obviously, they're using the jade to celebrate that. There are two other things that I do want to mention here. The hands themselves, they are brushed, and you have this beautiful line of polish all the way around the hands. And they're like a dagger or a dart hand. And I believe that the minute hand is slightly curved. I'm not 100% sure of that. It could be the distortion of the sapphire crystal, but to my eye, it sort of looked that way. And then you have a cap in the middle for the hand stack, which is a really nice touch. It's a really nice detail, something that you wouldn't think that you would need, but it obviously pulls this together. It makes it look really neat, really well put together. I love that. The indices are faceted, so when you move your hand around, you can see them light up and darken on one side and light up on the other. Really beautiful execution on this watch. Sort of plays with the light, even in the case and on the dial. Everything here is really nicely executed. Price on this watch is $1,450 on their website right now. This is in pre-order, I believe. I believe you could actually order one today. I think today is the day that you can actually order one, and they are limited to 200 pieces. So in total, there will be 600 of these, and that is it. I imagine these will be very, very popular. But definitely check out their website. I'll put a link to their website down in the description below if you're interested in this or one of the other cities, and I'll throw up a picture of those cities so you can see what I'm talking about. Definitely check out their website. Please also don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. It's super helpful for the channel and I very much appreciate it. That's really it. Thank you for logging on. Thank you for checking out this video. I'll catch you guys in the next video.